2 years ago, wow, time has flown, I made a video about Yu Mishozaki's Legend of Zelda manga, a very early adaptation of the Zelda franchise. I mentioned in that video that Mishozaki also wrote a sequel based on The Adventure of Link that hadn't received a proper English translation. Well, about a year and a half after that, I finally managed to enlist the help of someone who knows Japanese, and with him providing a rough translation and me polishing it and editing it onto the pages, we began the process of making an English translation of Mishozaki's Adventure of Link. Then, just a couple months ago, someone informed me that the people who had posted the original scans to historyofhyrule.com had apparently also decided to do a translation themselves, which they had just released. The manga had been sitting online untranslated for about a decade at this point, so that's just our luck. At that point, I was exactly halfway through, so that's about 100 pages, and my comrade in arms had just about finished translating the script, so I decided I was going to finish our version, even though another one was already out. I also decided that I would not read History of Hyrule's version until we completed our own translation, which we just recently did. So now, Yu Mishozaki's previously untranslated Adventure of Link manga has 2 English versions. Merry late Christmas. Obviously, I have a personal attachment to ours, but I'll link both in the description. So what is this manga? In my previous video on Mishozaki's Legend of Zelda manga, I pointed out that the first game has very little story, so Mishozaki had to add a lot of his own canon to flush out the plot to fill a 200-page manga. The Adventure of Link has a bit more story, but it's very disjointed. There's the sleeping Princess Zelda, who's a different Princess Zelda from the one in the first game, who isn't even mentioned in this game. There was a prince who hired a wizard to put the princess to sleep because he was trying to get all the pieces of the Triforce, but he's only in the backstory because that was hundreds of years ago and he's dead now. And then completely separate from that, Ganon's minions are trying to kill Link and use his blood to revive Ganon. This is the only part of the game's plot that really ties into the first game. Mishozaki must not have been too happy with how disconnected all the plot elements of Zelda 2 were, because when he adapted it into a manga, he changed a lot. The prince and wizard are completely gone, and the sleeping Zelda is now directly tied into the struggle against Ganon. Other than that, the first part of the manga actually does play out pretty close to the game. A Triforce symbol appears on Link's hand, and he's told he needs to go to the Northern Castle because of a prophecy. At the Northern Castle, he learns that he needs to place 6 crystals in 6 ancient palaces throughout Hyrule. Unlike the game, however, Princess Zelda accompanies him on his quest and is a major character, which is great because Mishozaki Zelda is best girl. And like in the game, there is another Zelda, who was the first of the Zelda line, but unlike in the game, where she's just a sleeping figure till the end, in the manga, Zelda the First, Zelda Senior, whatever you want to call her, is also a major character who guides Link and Zelda, first appearing to them as a spirit, and then possessing a dog and accompanying them on their quest. I really like Zelda 1's character design. It's very distinct and recognizable, while still being fairly simple. The stakes are clearer in the manga than in the game, whereas in the game, Link is trying to revive Zelda 1 because, it's a nice thing to do, I guess. In the manga, Zelda 1 needs to be revived to stop Ganon from returning. Which brings us to another major character in the manga, Link's Shadow. In the game, Link's Shadow was a surprise boss that appeared at the very end, no foreshadowing, not really a character so much as an obstacle. In the manga, Link's Shadow, although he's never actually called that, appears much earlier and is quickly revealed to actually be Ganon, or at least part of Ganon, who has returned to Hyrule and is working to fully revive himself. I mentioned that the Ganon in the first Mishozaki manga was the scariest he's ever been, but this version really takes things to the next level. Link's Shadow Ganon is pure nightmare fuel. He has Link's childish appearance, but he keeps getting more warped and monstrous as the story goes on. He talks about eating people's flesh and blood all the time, and at one point he actually distends his jaw to do it. This would definitely have given me nightmares as a kid. A few of Mishozaki's OCs from the original manga that I wasn't expecting to show up again returned. Link's sexy elf aunt, Kanan, or is it Kana, returns, and so does the girl who had a crush on him in the first game, Pell. Or is it Peru? They don't have very big roles, but it is kinda neat to see them again. A little building up of the Mishozaki alternate Zeldaverse. The last part of the manga unfolds very differently from how the game does. In the game, Link goes through a final palace, fights the Thunderbird boss, then fights Link's shadow, and the princess wakes up, and that's it. In the manga, after placing the crystals, 5 of which get glossed over really quickly, Link has to go into the underworld, or the netherworld, or the demon realm, however you want to translate it, fight Ganon's true form, which is even more huge and Lovecraftian than in the first manga. The Thunderbird doesn't even make an appearance. The manga ends kind of abruptly after the final battle, which is one of my bigger criticisms of it. I guess it's a pleasant enough ending, but considering this is the last entry in Mishozaki's Zeldaverse, there's not a whole lot of closure with all the characters. Also, who the heck are these two characters with Link and Zelda on the last page? They're definitely not in the rest of the manga. Are these two characters from another Mishozaki manga that's completely unknown in the West? The guy kinda looks like Kenshiro. If you have any idea of this, please let me know. Although it's a bit of a long shot, even on the internet, Mishozaki seems to be a rather mysterious figure. When I talked about the previous manga, I mentioned that it was the first appearance of a blonde Zelda in any official canon, and I wondered if Mishozaki had been exchanging notes with anyone at Nintendo, since blonde Zelda would first appear in a game in A Link to the Past. The Adventure of Link manga gave me even more of a sense that there was some back and forth between the creators of A Link to the Past and this manga. The finale feels a lot closer to A Link to the Past than Zelda 2. A Link to the Past has Link go into the Dark World to fight Ganon. In this, Link goes to the Underworld to fight Ganon. The two are very similar in concept. They're both alternate planes of existence where Ganon was sealed away to protect the world from him, and in both stories Link has to gain access to them to defeat Ganon. They're also aesthetically similar, both shadowy realms dominated by architecture reminiscent of an ancient civilization. There's a giant pyramid in the Dark World at the end of that game. There's a big Greco-Roman looking building in the Underworld. Link gets turned into a rabbit in the Dark World in the game. In the manga, Zelda Sr. becomes a dog. Mishozaki's Adventure of Link manga came out just a month or two before the A Link to the Past game did. Another interesting parallel to later Zelda games is that Mishozaki's Adventure of Link has a group of ninja-like fighters fighting for Hyrule. Much later in the series, the Sheikah would be introduced, who are a very ninja-like group who work behind the scenes to protect Hyrule. Impa is also connected to both groups. In the Adventure of Link, she gives the Hyrulean stealth troops their orders, and most incarnations of Impa have been a Sheikah since they were first introduced in Oracle of Time. This one's probably just a coincidence, because again, the Sheikah didn't get introduced until much later, but it's fun to take note of. Overall, I really enjoyed Mishozaki's Zeldaverse. There are a lot of fun characters, and the story has that classic fantasy epic feel. The artwork is very nice for the most part. There were a few action scenes where it was a bit confusing what was happening, but most of them work pretty well and are suitably exciting. The character and world design is really cool. And hopefully now that both volumes have English translations available online, it'll get a little more love from the Zelda fandom. By the way, Link never wears anything like the weird suit of armor he has on the cover in the book. Someone suggested to me that it's Japanese plate armor, but the images I found of Japanese plate armor look nothing like that. He looks like he has a pair of metal turtle shells on his shoulders. Before I end the video, I also want to thank all the good people who work with various scanlation sites who helped me find a place to put up our version of the manga. People from sites like Hero Scans and Fire Syndicate, as well as the Scanner Usage School Discord. Most of these people and sites are associated with MangaDex, which is kind of the big hub of manga fan translation hosting. You guys were great. Thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and comment if you have anything you want to share. It helps us get seen by more people. If you'd like to see more, you can subscribe and click the notification bell. Keep an eye out though, because you might get unsubscribed or not get alerted properly for some reason. It's happened to people. And I do recommend following the backup channel on BitChute. It has content that's blocked on YouTube, like my Let's Watches of Tenchi Muyo and Sailor Moon. Thanks everyone, and have a wonderful day.